So your circumstance is always neutral. C, you have a thought about it. T. F, the thought creates a feeling. The feeling leads to A, action. You'll take an action based on your feeling, which leads to a result. CTFAR.
Welcome to Tip the Scales podcast. I'm Jenn Gore, and I am taking over the Tip the Scales podcast again. I feel like Maria needs to pay me now. But I'm here with Megan Whiteside. Today we had the amazing opportunity to talk about all the things: mom life as a lawyer, nursing home litigation. We talked about mindset. We talked about balancing career and family. Just had an amazing conversation. Such a good person to talk about these topics, living it, doing it, and stay tuned to hear the whole episode. Megan, will you say hello to the audience?
Hello, everybody. I'm Megan Whiteside. I am the owner and managing attorney of Whiteside Legal. I am a nursing home abuse and neglect trial lawyer in DC and Maryland, and I also co-counsel nationally.
Amazing. So, Megan, today we were here at AAJ, and I feel like I've seen you at a lot of the AAJ events. You're usually
I'm a regular.
at the AAJ events. American Association for Justice, for those people who don't know. Where did we meet? I think we met in Louisville.
We met in Kentucky. That's exactly right. We were both speaking at the KJA Auto Summit.
Yes.
I've been a trial lawyer for a long time, and I've done all different types of personal injury, including auto. And Jay Vaughn invited both of us to speak there. And I think we met at a barbecue restaurant over lunch.
With Jay.
Yeah, with Jay and with Bob Simon.
Yes, it was.
We had a 3-hour lunch, and the rest is history.
The craziest thing is, I feel like the time that I met you, we immediately, it was like an instant connection.
Yes.
And I was like, first of all, I saw you speaking and I was like, this is a badass woman.
Thank you.
And you are a legit full-blown trial lawyer. And that is what you were talking about when you were in Kentucky, right?
Yes. And part of what I was talking about is how do we balance what we do? And I love being a trial lawyer. I'm one of those people that I've known I wanted to be litigating in a courtroom. I knew that as a teenager, and just figuring out what I was going to do. And what we get to do is such a privilege. But what comes along with it is a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. And so part of what I was talking about is, how do you find a way to be a happy lawyer and a happy person and do a great job, but not succumb to all that stress and let it overwhelm you? And so talking about mindfulness techniques that I've used as a lawyer and as a mom, let me tell you, in parenthood, a lot of these strategies are just as necessary as in the trial lawyer world. So anyway, it was a lot of fun.
So one thing that a lot of people don't know about you is you have 4 kids.
I do.
I remember seeing you with your son at AAJ last year.
A year ago, yeah.
He was a baby.
He was
actually, when
old.
I met you, you were pregnant with him.
That's right.
And you were out and about speaking. You were pretty pregnant.
Yes, I actually had to get a note from my OB with the date I had to stop flying. And I brought it with me for my last couple of speaking engagements because I was so close to the end of my pregnancy. I was worried the airline was going to stop me from flying. But I am on a mission, both in the work that I do, but also in speaking on issues relating to not only just the substantive work we do, but finding a way to make it through this, not just surviving, but thriving, right? There are so many trial lawyers who suffer from depression and anxiety and turn to substances to cope. And even if not to those extremes, who are just deeply unhappy. And so deeply unhappy. And it's not an act. I think some people, when they meet me, they think that this is an act.
You are truly a joyful person.
I am a joyful person. And it's work. It's not just, it doesn't just happen to you. And so whenever I get a chance to speak, I often am asked to speak on things related to mindfulness or techniques when it comes to marketing and networking, because I think a lot of that is mindset work.
Yes, we talked a lot about that at that lunch when we met.
Yes.
And you don't become a resilient person unless you've been through some shit, right?
Yes.
So it's you weren't just born this way, right?
No, I think I was. So I will say I have a sunny disposition. I think that part of my nature is the charge the hill, thrill of victory. I'm going to go for it. I'm an optimist. I'm an eternal optimist. But life does beat you down, and you don't get through 15 years of practice and 4 kids without some fails. You fall down on your ass, and it's about every time you fall down, how do you get back up and get back up stronger? And I think what we've bonded on is there is nothing I'm going to face. There's nothing you're going to face that's going to keep us down. We may fall down, but
temporary.
It's temporary. I think you said to me as I opened my firm and gone through some of the growing pains and struggles is, you've said, I will walk over broken glass before I let my firm fail. And
not even an option.
Failure's not an option. And so I had an associate once he got to know me after working with me for a few months, he goes, Megan, it's not an act. Like, he saw me in trial and realized I have these strategies that I use to be able to charge forward and stay optimistic even when you get rulings that hurt your case, or the witness doesn't perform the way that you want, or you went through an intake on a great case and they ended up going with someone else, right? There are things that happen that can easily get you down and throw you off, but there are strategies that you can use to right the ship, get back on course.
Optimism is the mindset, right? It's like people that can maintain their optimism actually have a lot of mind control.
Yeah, it's all thought work. So what I love to talk about is that thoughts are optional, and the thoughts that you choose will impact your feelings, which will impact your actions. And
correct.
So if you
control the thought, control the action.
That's it. And in a way, you control your results.
Oh, 100%.
And so it all starts with, it's the CTFAR model, which I did not create, right? Brooke Castillo is a life coach who's brilliant, who created this, and it really resonated with me. And I use this model every single day. So your circumstance is always neutral. C. You have a thought about it. T. F. The thought creates a feeling. The feeling leads to A, action. You'll take an action based on your feeling, which leads to a result, CTFAR. And so
I love that. It's so true.
And it's clear. It has given me such clarity that
you choose how you can think about something,
exactly.
Whether it's a setback or, you can view it as, hey, this is a redirection, or hey, this is temporary, versus like if you think something super negative
and wallow and get on this negative thought spiral and woe is me, and I'm, everybody's smarter than me, and everybody's going to think less of me, spiral. And what does those thoughts lead to? Feelings of inadequacy, insecurity, self-doubt, self-loathing.
Let's just pause there. Have you suffered from those thoughts?
Absolutely.
Imposter syndrome?
I used to. Absolutely. So life is 50-50. There's nobody who walks through this life with ease 100% of the time.
So true.
Every one of us faces adversity, big and small, in some way every single day, right? From something as trivial as having a bad hair day, right, to something as catastrophic as the loss of a loved one, or, some sort of public humiliation that is just devastating, or something really big that just knocks you out, right? And those happen to all of us in ways big and small every single day. And so when you accept that life isn't happening to me, life is happening for me. And you say that all the time.
100%.
And my circumstances are all neutral. So from the trivial of I'm having a really bad hair day to the catastrophic of I've, lost my parent or spouse, right? That circumstance is neutral. But we immediately will have a thought about it. And before you do thought work and learn to pause and be conscious and curious about those thoughts, right? Before I learned to do that, I was on autopilot thinking
something would happen. You immediately go into a frequency.
And a reaction. Mm-hmm. And without the pause to get curious about those thoughts and recognize it. And that's what mindfulness is.
I mean, I've had to do that in my life so much, to the point where I do feel like I'm very trained to, like, the moment something bad happens, I'm like, what is this here to teach me? Mm-hmm. Why is this happening? I'm not like down the rabbit hole.
Yes.
But it's a level of like awareness or self-awareness. And it's hard because sometimes you want to just like go down that spiral.
And that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes we all need to have those like wallowing moments.
Like, I'm not happy.
I'm going to wallow today. I'm in a bad mood.
I
and
give
just wanna
myself
be here.
24 hours. You have 24 hours to be mad, to lose your mind, to feel like the world is against you. And then like, that's it.
I like that.
It's over.
Yeah. And I say to myself, the self-talk is breathe and release it. Okay. You're going to feel this. You just got to feel it. You're going to wallow and then breathe and release it. And so, the mindfulness piece is just getting observant and getting curious. And like you said, looking for the lesson, right? What is this here to teach me? And so, the best example that has helped me as a trial lawyer is when I realized one of my biggest fails in trial. I will never forget the judge. I will never forget the courtroom we were in DC Superior Court. I was a younger litigator representing a single mom in a really righteous case. She was a head-on collision, and I felt so prepared. I felt so good about that case, and I thought this was going to be just a big moral victory for her, and that was going to change the course of her life and the life of her two children. And we prepped, and we were ready. And I really let her down in direct examination. And I can say that now with the benefit of hindsight and reflection on it. But what happened was, even though in trial prep, she was picking up what I was putting down. We were on the same wavelength. We were ready. In trial, we couldn't connect. And she couldn't pick up what I was trying to get in my questions. And the judge interrupted me. And I remember looking at the jury, and I'll never forget it. We had a priest on my jury who, wore the collar and everything. He had his arms crossed. He was scowling at me he was in the front center of that jury box. I thought, even God is against me. Like, it just in that moment, the circumstance was she was not picking up what I was putting down. That was neutral. But my thought about it in that moment, can I curse on the Tip the Scales podcast? I'm fucking this up. That was the thought I had, which was, now I can see an unhelpful thought. But what that led to, and like even just telling the story, I can feel it. Like, it felt it in my chest, and I got closed off because I'm fucking this up was shame. The feeling I had was shame, was fear, was, just all the self-critical, all of, so
Disappointment.
So those feelings
Take over.
They took over, and I didn't have my shoulders back and strong. I had them. I was, crouching. I'm sure I was crouching forward because I know I feel shame in my chest whenever that optional thought leads to that optional feeling, right? And I didn't have the tools to turn it around in that moment. So circumstance, witness wasn't picking up what I was putting down. Thought, I'm fucking this up. Action, feeling shame, action, closing off. But I also that action was to be small. And that action was to sort of cower in that moment. Instead of pausing and changing course and pivoting, I forgot an entirely impactful and essential part of my direct and didn't ask her about some aspects of her non-economic damages and the losses that she had suffered. Because I got distracted. And the feelings and the actions led to a result of I did not pull out of her what needed to come out, the really important aspects to her damages, right? We had the medical bills, we had the medical testimony, but there's, these cases the person's story is so important. And so the result was a victory, but a very small verdict. And so it was just crushing. There's certain losses we all will just always hold on to. Even though it was a win, it felt like a loss. Now, I've had many trials since then. And many times I've had my client where they're not picking up what I'm putting down. And I can think back to my last trial, and I had a moment where he was not getting what I was asking, and I paused, and the negative thoughts came to me. I'm fucking this up. But I have the tools that I realize, like, oh, I can also recognize it in my body. If I feel a tightness in my chest and I have those thoughts, I now have the pause. And the thought I chose instead was, you got this, try something else.
Be adaptable.
Try something else. Exactly. And I had a deep breath, and instead of crouching my shoulders forward, I put my shoulders down and back. Took a deep breath, and I actually made fun of myself in front of the jury and said, I don't remember what I said, but I said something along the lines of, you know what, that was a really bad question. Let's try and start over, or just something self-deprecating of like, that was, the bad question or something along those lines. And one of my jurors laughed.
That's good.
Which is a good thing. I'm a human being. I'm not this tight defense lawyer in a suit.
People are like, I feel like jurors, when you humanize yourself, that's helpful.
Yes. So we're not the robots on the defense in their black stuffy suits who have a playbook that they can't deviate from, right? We're human beings. We're colorful. We're dynamic. We're real. And so this thought work and the mindfulness that I do allowed me in that moment to have my own back. And I know that anytime I go to trial, I can have my own back because I'm not perfect. No one is.
And it actually makes you more relatable.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to talk about the type of work that you do.
Okay.
Because you are pretty much doing a lot of nursing home cases.
Yeah.
And I think this is an interesting concept right now because more and more people are entering nursing homes. So can you just tell me and the audience, like, what do you think is happening in the nursing home world that's leading to so many lawsuits?
So I will say this is not new. But,
Correct.
But maybe we are entering a season where trial lawyers like myself and advocacy groups that fight for the elderly are getting traction in bringing this to light. So I do nursing home abuse and neglect and fight for the elderly in a way that, it's a real passion.
But you're deep in it. So
okay, so let me take a step back.
What is your view on the care that's being given most of the time in a nursing home?
I will say that a lot of these nursing homes are warehousing people.
What does that mean?
Let me give you an example. There is a nursing home in Maryland that I have sued before that had quad rooms. That means they have 4 elderly people in a room.
Okay.
So you picture like a hospital, right? That sometimes you have 1 bed in a room, sometimes you have 2. Can you imagine rooms where there are 3 or 4 beds in a room? And we call them residents, but you can say
Small?
patients. No, it's huge. Multiple floors. Not all the rooms are quad rooms. They have double and triple rooms too.
Why is that, to save money?
Yes. Because the higher the census, meaning the higher the number of butts in beds, right? The more nursing home residents you have in a building, the more money that's coming in. And these major corporations will come in and buy multiple facilities, in jurisdictions or in regions, like across multiple states, and they are extremely profitable.
Okay, but tell me the downsides to having 4 people versus 1, other than obvious privacy.
So it's not just that, you could have 1 person in a room and the problems still persist, because what I see across cases is that the management companies and owners do not set their direct care providers up for success. So every nursing home has nurses that care for their residents, and they have nursing assistants. They're either called GNAs, geriatric nursing assistants, or CNAs, certified nursing assistants. And in these nursing homes, people who go there are sick. They can no longer safely live on their own.
It's not that they're just old, but that they are incapable of living on their own.
That's exactly right. No one goes into a nursing home because they want to. They go in because they have to. They have some medical need or nursing need or care need, like everyday activities of everyday living that they can no longer safely do for themselves. And so everybody needs care. And if you look at the ratio of the number of care staff to the number of residents in beds,
it's not right.
It's not right. And even if you have the most diligent, caring, hardworking geriatric nursing assistant that you could find, there are some facilities that there's no way they can properly care for all the people they're giving to this person. I deposed a geriatric nursing assistant who routinely worked an overnight shift. There's 3 nursing shifts a day. They're 8-hour shifts. And she worked the overnight shift, and she routinely had 30 plus patients, or residents we call them, to take care of.
During the night.
And the standard of care and the regulations that apply to the care that needs to be offered any shift, but including the overnight shift, is that these geriatric nursing assistants and nurses need to care for these residents every 2 hours.
How is this possible?
It's impossible. It's impossible. And so they're not setting their people up for success. And then, of course, in every industry, you have people who, if they're not supervised or monitored, they're not actually going to do their job. Some people are self-motivated and amazing, and then some aren't. That's just life, right? And so the nursing homes don't have adequate supervision and monitoring of their staff. They don't have adequate supervision, monitoring, and care of the residents. And it's built into the business model, and residents get hurt.
So tell me, what is the number one injury you see in nursing home cases?
Pressure injuries, bed sores.
What is a bed sore?
Okay, so we're going to get gross for a second. So as we age, we lose muscle mass, and our skin becomes what we call friable. It's more delicate and brittle, and you may have seen your grandparents or elderly people in your life who will easily bruise or easily get their skin cut, right? Like you don't have the same viability and elasticity in your skin. Okay, so you've got friable skin that's more delicate, less muscle mass, and if an elderly person with the normal signs of aging is left in the same position too long in bed, gravity takes its toll. So all of us have bony prominences. So think about like your tailbone, your sacrum and your coccyx, right? That's a bone right there at the base of your spine. Think about the backs of your shoulder blades, right? Think about your elbows, the back of your head, your heels. These are all bony areas of your body with not a lot of skin, not a lot of muscle, and not a lot of tissue between the bone and your skin. And with pressure, right, unrelieved pressure, that's why they're called pressure injuries.
But you're just laying.
You're just laying. And
how is that pressure?
So the weight of your body and your bones against your skin.
That doesn't happen to me and you because we're moving.
Because we're moving and
we have muscle.
And we have more tissue. And it really...
Y'all better go to the gym.
Well, and I will say, after my last baby, I was in bed in the hospital, in those days postpartum, and I stayed in the same position for a little bit too long. And I realized my sacrum was sore, like the bottom of my tailbone. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is going to be the beginning of a pressure injury if I don't move. But it had not been, it probably was like 2-3 hours, not, I just had a case where this gentleman, for the last 7 days he was at this facility before he had to be emergently transported to the hospital. He went over 8 hours at a time in the same position on his back for 5 out of those 7 days. And he got this nasty bed sore on his sacrum that opened up, got infected, and it's a whole big thing.
So you're saying the procedure is to move people.
Offload pressure. It's so simple.
Move people.
You turn and reposition them. So you turn them at a slight angle to the right side, and then 2 hours later, you turn them onto their back. And then 2 hours later, you turn them slightly to the left side. And so you're
Did the residents know that this is what's supposed to happen?
If they're cognitively intact, but a lot of these folks are cognitively impaired. They've got dementia. It's a normal part of aging. And so they don't have the capacity to know for themselves, hey, and some of them are not able to move themselves because of their medical condition. So they are completely dependent on the care staff to move them. And what happens?
How come the staff doesn't know this is a primary problem?
They do. It's foreseeable. All of them know it. It's part of their training. It is in all the policies and procedures. This is standard nursing practice. And so if skin is left under a bone, in between a bone and a bed, and you think a bed is like a soft surface, but over time, the pressure,
I want to shift right now.
I know.
I'm like,
it's compression, right? The pressure of the bone and the pressure of the bed.
It freaks me out.
And there are stages to it. So the first stage is just redness that won't go away. The next stage is the redness opens up. Like, do you remember back when your babies had diaper rash and they had just like the little bit of open skin but it doesn't go deep. It's just sort of like, oh, okay, this is a, open area. I got to put the diaper cream on. And that's exactly what they do in nursing homes. They use a barrier cream, like a diaper cream. So it goes from redness to a superficial open wound. And then if the pressure is unrelieved, the wound goes deeper and deeper and deeper all the way down to the bone. And that's the stage 4. And I've had cases, Jen, and we're going to get gross for a second, where you can just look at a bed sore and you see the person's tailbone. And then they get nasty and infected. And I have been desensitized because I've seen so many of these. I worked with a paralegal who was new to the work, and I was just going through a case and I didn't prepare her. And she yelped. Oh, okay, well, this is what a stage 4 bed sore looks like, and we're going to see these in a lot of our cases.
What would be your recommendation for somebody that has an elderly family member that needs this type of care?
So this is my passion. In my personal life, anyone I know who has somebody in their family who's going to subacute rehab or long-term care, because think, think you have an elderly person in your life who falls and breaks their hip. Had surgery. They usually have to go to subacute rehab after surgery for daily physical therapy and other needs. The same problems happen in subacute rehab. One of my most horrible cases, this gentleman was supposed to be in subacute rehab for 6 to 8 weeks, and he never made it home, and he died in less than that amount of time because they allowed him to get this massive infected bed sore that led to sepsis and death. It was awful.
So the bed sore leads to sepsis, which then leads to death.
Bed sore leads to infection, because think, if you have an open wound on your backside, and some of these folks are incontinent,
gosh, it's a double whammy.
It's gross. I know. I probably should have given you a warning before we went on the podcast, but
people need to know this.
People need to know this.
This is the part of life that so many people choose to not be.
It's in the shadows.
Involved with, or to really educate themselves about.
And no one wants to believe that this is actually happening, that any human being would let this happen to another human being. And I firmly believe that the nursing staff is trying their best. The vast majority of these
They're set up for failure.
They're set up for failure. They're good people who are trying, but they're set up for failure. And so if you have a loved one who's going to subacute rehab or a nursing home, you have to be an advocate.
And show up.
You have to show up, and you have to show up at different times, because if they know you're going to come after work every day, Monday through Friday, they're going to put on they're going to be there. They're going to be caring for your person. You got to go unannounced at random times, on random days, unpredictably, like you're a secret shopper, right? Like you never know when the person's going to come.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and you need to be informed. So every single nursing home resident has to have a written care plan. It's required by law, all 50 states. And you, as the advocate for your elderly person,
needs to audit.
You're entitled to be at care plan meetings. When they go over, the care plan has everybody's risks, diagnoses, or problems, and they have to put in interventions that they're going to do to keep your person safe. That's the simplest way to think of it. So you are entitled, the nursing home resident and you as their family member, especially if you're a power of attorney or a responsible person taking care and making decisions, be at every care plan conference. Even if you can't be there in person, say, I'm going to call in on a conference line. You talk to the staff, get to know them, ask them about what they're doing for your person, because some of the things that lead to the most catastrophic injuries I see is a breakdown in communication. So the care plan could look great, but if it doesn't go into a certain portion of the treatment administration records where the nurses are going every day to care for the person, if it isn't subject to a physician order or showing up in the electronic medical records in a certain way, this direct care staff doesn't have time to go and read everybody's 15-page care plan every shift, right? They have way too much work to do.
Wild.
So you've got to be there. You've got to be informed. You've got to speak to somebody like me who sees the worst of the worst to say, okay, my dad is going into this facility. These are his issues. I will give plenty of free advice, because if I can see one less person end up in a case that my office sees, or my colleagues who do similar work, that is the mission.
So you practice primarily in Maryland and Virginia.
Maryland and DC.
Oh, and DC.
Yeah, not Virginia
Not
yet.
Virginia yet, but you pro hoc vice into cases in Virginia, right?
Not yet, although there may be one on the horizon. Okay. But I'm absolutely willing to, because I see my colleagues with small firms will get these intake calls for nursing home cases, and I think one of three things will happen. Number one, they'll realize that it's a good case, but they're out of their depth. They don't have the capacity, so they refer it out. That's a good thing, right? Like the person is getting in touch with a lawyer who will take the case. The second thing that will happen is they don't screen the case at all, because they're out of their depth, and
they just say we can't help.
And sometimes that leads families to stop and not go and seek the help.
They might think they don't have a case,
right? And the worst is the third thing is that they will screen the case. They will see it as a low value med mal case and discourage the person's family from going forward.
And your view is that these are high dollar cases.
Yes.
And so when you're pursuing a case against somebody, against the nursing home, what are you finding, in terms of arguing for damages, for money?
So these cases they touch on such fundamental universal values that resonate with juries. And so I am not afraid to take a case to trial with a 90-year-old person who dies in a nursing home and they may have exceeded their statistical life expectancy. So a traditional med mal lawyer will go, well, there's no damages there. They're
going to die.
They were going to die anyway. And that's the defense's playbook. They were old, they were sick, they were going to die anyway. You're just sad and now you're asking for money. That's the defense's playbook. That's not our playbook. I firmly believe if the way that nursing homes treated our elderly was the way that daycares treated our babies, it'd be on the news. There'd be massive lawsuits. People would be up in arms. So as a society, are we saying that your life is only valuable when you're young, when you're fit, when you're healthy, and
You're a baby?
When there's a certain point in life where now suddenly we're old and we don't care? To me, how you are treated, everybody, young and old, deserves to be treated with dignity.
100%.
And everybody deserves care, especially when you promise you can provide it, right? So these families are putting their loved ones in nursing homes as a last resort. They don't want to. And the nursing homes are marketing, we're going to treat mom like family. We're going to care. And when they don't uphold their promises,
it's such a breach.
It's a breach of trust, which is a universal principle. And what these defense teams are saying when they defend these cases is that it didn't matter how you died because you were old. And
which is not, and at the end of the day, we don't know if the person had good care, they might have gone to 98.
Exactly.
It's really hard to say.
Think about it this way.
And also, who wants to die as a result of a bed sore? Maybe this person would have drifted into sleep and just died naturally in a peaceful death. If you have been neglected, I think the argument is like, nobody wants to die as a result of neglect.
And think about it. What we as trial lawyers who do nursing home abuse and neglect are saying is how you die matters.
Yes.
And
quality of life matters.
Quality of life matters. And the elderly woman or the elderly man who dies as a result of complications from a bed sore, think about this. In the last days, weeks, months of their life, depending on how long this condition has affected them, they've got a massive hole in their backside. And they're painful. But think of the indignity.
And demoralizing.
And even for those patients who have dementia who might not appreciate it as, the patients who are cognitively intact, all of those folks in their last days, their children are seeing their bare parents' backside with this massive, nasty wound. I mean, all of us who live our lives, who launch our family and our children, who contribute to our communities, our churches, our workplaces, who do good work for so long in our lives, we all hope that in our golden years that we are able to live out our days in happiness, pain-free, with dignity and respect. And so when someone dies as a result of a nasty infected bed sore, they have lots of procedures that I won't go into it because that's gross, but they have lots of procedures at the end of their life that are awful. They have pain, indignity, and the way they die is awful.
It's not ideal.
We all hope for an easy, pain-free death.
I think that's what really hits on these cases is you and me sit here in the jury and think, I don't want that to happen to me.
Or my parents. Or
I don't want that to happen to my grandma.
And
it's so close to home.
And when you juxtapose the indignity and the pain and the awful final days of someone's life with the understaffing and the profits, right? You put those two things together. It's all avoidable.
So you have come to me and said, listen, I'm willing to work with people all around the whole country. You kind of feel nursing home is what it is. And even if it's in different states, the laws are pretty.
There are federal regulations that apply to every single nursing home in the country that are the same. And the state laws and regulations are what differ. But the state of our laws across the country, there are some very common universal principles.
Like bright line rules.
Yes. And so, when we talked about pressure injuries, turning and repositioning every 2 hours is the standard everywhere.
Yeah, you can't get around that.
It's an international standard, actually. So you can't get around that. Standards when it comes to care planning for someone who's at risk of falling, that's the same everywhere. And so I am on a mission to see more trial lawyers take these cases. And I fundamentally believe that if you and I did a nursing home case together and I taught you how to do it, you could then carry it forward.
Correct.
Right. And so, we talk business and my business vision may evolve. But for now, I am true to the mission and want to see more people take these cases and stop looking at them as low value med mal cases. And
That's
really,
the biggest takeaway. I think most people, they're not properly vetting these in their intake.
or they're taking them and they're settling them for peanuts. And then it does a disservice to all of the rest of us who are really focused on this work. And so I think educating our fellow trial lawyers
On the value
and looking at those fundamental human principles.
So, give me an example of a result you've recently got.
So I will say this because the recent ones have been confidential settlements, but it varies widely by state. Where I practice in Maryland, we have caps on non-economic damages, which drives down the values of settlements, which I think is wrong because it is sending a message that somebody's life in Maryland is worth less than it is in Utah,
Another state,
right?
yeah.
Or Georgia or wherever. And so what I see cases, depending on your state law, in certain states that are capped and they're, the state laws will really,
Limit.
I mean, in Texas, my goodness, their cap, I think, is $200,000. That's awful, right? And so the value is very state specific, but I will say that in states across the country, you're seeing 7- and 8-figure verdicts.
That's crazy.
So
Amazing.
my colleague in DC got a $2 million verdict on a case, and I believe that his decedent was in her 90s.
Wow.
Right.
Amazing.
And so there really is potential not only to do great work, but to make a really great living and to be able to, the way I see it is what we are able to earn in this profession exponentially increases the impact that we can make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not only in, verdicts drive hopefully change in our communities, because I want to see nursing homes have better staffing and offer better care. But then I, as a trial lawyer who's informed in this, can donate to these advocacy groups that fight for seniors. AAJ, but organizations like Consumer Voice.
Yes.
Like any of you, go and check out Consumer Voice. They do amazing work to inform the public, to advocate for elderly, and to really, advocate on Capitol Hill, to drive change in those federal regulations that are so important that govern nursing home care. If I continue to do this work, I can then make an impact by giving to these organizations who are carrying on. We have the same mission, we're just attacking it in different ways.
Yes.
And so, I think trial lawyers sometimes get a bad rap, but there's such a unique opportunity for us to be informed on
And we're
corporate malfeasance.
Policing the civil justice system.
Yes. And we are fighting to keep the courthouse open for all Americans. So I don't care your political persuasion. I don't care if you're rich or poor. If your loved one died at the hands of nursing home abuse or neglect, I'm going to fight for you.
Yeah.
And I think that if we need to call out from the shadows the horrible care that our fellow Americans are receiving, and hopefully that will drive change and people will have better care, because no one wants to send their loved one to a nursing home. No one.
No. And I think the work you're doing is really admirable. It's very you've educated me a lot on, because as owning a law firm, we get a lot of calls, and nursing home work is not like the primary thing that a lot of personal injury firms are focused on.
No, there are not that many of us in the nursing home litigation group in AAJ, or in my state organization, we've got a nursing home group.
But there's so many people going into care in the last 10 years. So this is like an area of law that's expanding.
It's a great growth opportunity for firms who are looking to diversify their practices, because the way that the regulatory scheme is set up in these nursing homes is how I can help co-counsel with somebody in a different state, because the care that must be offered in nursing homes is applicable across the country, which means that what we do as trial lawyers
Is the same.
Translates
Yes.
across state lines. Obviously, you got to know your state-specific procedures and laws. There are intricacies that you have to be aware of. But I like to say our nursing home litigation groups, both on the AAJ national level and the state level, we are small but mighty.
Yes.
And for those lawyers who want to get into this niche, we are a community that lifts up our own. You need help finding an expert. You need help, getting opposition
You guys are
research.
very communal.
Oh, yeah. We share ideas on, arguments and discovery and motions practice. Like, I have found such incredible resources from my colleagues in this space. I've only been doing nursing home abuse and neglect work for about 4 years now, or so. And, the skills are transferable. I've done auto. I've done premises. I've done general med mal. And so I came to this work with a wealth of knowledge in those other areas of personal injury. So for lawyers listening, if your firm has med mal cases,
you probably have nursing home cases that you're turning down.
And that you have the capacity if you dedicate, even a small team.
If you worked with Megan.
If you work with me, call me. And
you're teaching about this around the country.
I'm teaching
You've
about
spoken on this. I feel like, you're very open to collaboration.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you want someone to come and talk to your local justice association about why nursing home cases are not low-value med mal cases and why we absolutely need more trial lawyers to come and do this work, I would be glad to. It is something that has lit a fire in my belly that I never experienced doing the other types of personal injury. And I think it goes back to I am in a season with small children.
And you feel like they're fragile similarly.
And look at the parallels, right? Babies and toddlers have poor safety awareness, are dependent on us for feeding them, are depending on us for changing them and bathing them, are
the most vulnerable people in the population.
And none of us want to envision it, but we are just as vulnerable at the end of our lives.
Oh, it's so actually crazy that your life starts off, you're vulnerable. You become powerful and active and independent, and then you return.
And I think about the way our society used to operate is that people lived with multiple generations in one household.
And they took care.
Of the elderly.
So they were vested.
And the young people saw what the end of life looks like, and they saw death in a way that was much more visible and visceral than I think we do.
It's so hidden now.
It's hidden now. And that only serves the nursing homes, that this is hidden in the shadows.
Yeah, like all of this could not be if your family is heavily involved in your... But I'm going to tell you, I had a family member that was in a nursing home at a young age because they had a stroke. And they were cognitively aware much more than all the other residents. Let's say they were 65. Everyone else in there was like in their 90s. So most of the other residents were not with it on a intellectual, cognitive level. And she used to report to us that, like, there's a lot of neglect because the people can't, they're not in a space to like say anything.
They don't have the mental and cognitive capacity to complain or to advocate for themselves.
Say, hey, this is what's happening.
This is wrong. This is what happened to me. There are residents who have short-term memory loss that like they won't actually remember the neglect or the abuse.
So what was crazy to me in my family member's situation was my family member was depressed. Being in this nursing home after having a stroke, you're surrounded by a lot of people who, it's a very bizarre experience being deeply involved in these nursing homes because like every week someone's dying. So like she would have friends in there, friends, like they're all in there together. And like, it's just like a rotation of people dying. So that's kind of depressing, right? So what blew my mind in this experience was my family member never had bed sores, thank God, but she was a lot younger again. But she did have a stroke, so she couldn't, half of her body, no function. So she was wheelchair bound and things like that. But I found out that she was paying some of the staff to get her a crazy amount of alcohol.
Oh my goodness.
And all kinds of other things. And the staff was subjective to this. Like, so it's weird because also weird things can go on with like they're actually an adult. They can buy alcohol, but should they have alcohol?
Well, and I think that Absolutely. I have seen
You've seen
cases
stuff like
where,
that.
but not alcohol abuse or overindulgence, where somebody as part of their care plan could have an optional beer with or after dinner, and their family provided beer in a fridge in his room, and he had an anoxic brain injury in his 30s, so he was actually in the nursing home from 35 until I encountered his case, and he died, I think it was at age 50 or 51, choking on something, which is another really catastrophic nursing home type of case I see. But it was part of his care plan. It was something that was discussed with.
No. This is called, there's no alcohol approved.
Yeah, it should not happen that way. It's got to go through the normal channel.
Sometimes people in the nursing home can give money to the staff and get them to do things that are against the plan. And I've seen that firsthand.
That's awful. And I think that's one example, and I'm sure that there are a lot of other things that may be going on
that you're because it's they're kind of like a resident, so they feel like this is kind of like my friend who's here. It doesn't feel the same as a hospital setting, because it's your apartment, and it feels very.
It's very different because it's a nursing home.
It's a home.
It becomes where somebody lives out. For some people it's temporary, right? That's the subacute rehab. And for some people, it's permanent, long-term care. They are going to live there until they die.
For 10 years.
So it needs to be a home-like environment. And
I think that's where sometimes these standards can get a little relaxed.
I think that it's my assumption, and I don't know your loved one's case or those folks, but if somebody is making such little money to do such hard work, and they
throw them $100, this is what it is.
I think it's a problem. And
and my family member ended up having multiple falls, being inebriated.
Oh no.
Which, if we kept saying, how did she get the alcohol?
So falls are another big problem in nursing homes, and what they are supposed to do, what the standard of care requires, what the regulations require, is after each fall, they do a root cause analysis. Right. They do an investigation and get to the root cause of why did this happen? How do we prevent it from happening again? Because not every fall is avoidable or preventable.
Yeah,
you could do everything right, and falls do happen. But we look at, in the law, we talk about foreseeability, right? It's the same thing in the nursing home world. They talk about avoidability. Was this an avoidable or an unavoidable fall? Same thing with pressure injuries. Some pressure injuries still happen, bed sores still happen, even though you do everything right. We call those unavoidable.
You just have to get to the root of if you
don't do so what we often see, and the cases that I decline to take and can tell the loved one who's reaching out to me that I do not see evidence of abuse or neglect, is the cases where something bad happens and the nursing home does that root cause analysis. And then they put new measures in place, new interventions to say, okay, here's how we're going to try to heal this person from this injury. And here's how we're going to try to prevent it from happening again. And that's how the nursing process is supposed to work, right? Because medicine, nursing, it's
a practice.
It's a practice. And it's a cycle of assess, okay, what's going on, make a plan, implement the plan, and then check and see if the plan is working. If the plan's not working, we assess again, change the plan, implement the change, and check and see if it's working. And it's a cycle that happens daily.
So some of that is natural.
And so your loved one could have gotten an injury in a nursing home that was not the result of negligence. But I think you need good nursing administration and good administrators in nursing homes and good trial lawyers to really see if the process is being implemented as it is required to be. And if not, try to drive change.
Okay, so we're going to take a little turn here.
Okay.
We're going to go back to, you mentioned small children.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to the person that says, Megan, how can you be a trial lawyer, a working mom, have 4 kids, be present? We know that that's a narrative.
Yes. And people assume you are the outlier. They assume I'm an outlier. I'm an anomaly.
You're the anomaly. You're the enigma.
It's not possible for me. I get that a lot.
You're in shape.
Yes.
How do you do it all?
I don't.
That's the question.
That's the answer, though. I don't do it all. And I could say a lot of different things. I will say this. I am deeply, deeply grateful to God. I am blessed beyond measure. And I was given a set of skills and talents as a person that have set me up to be able to do this. So I don't project onto anyone that this is something that everyone should be doing, having 4 kids and a law firm and all of the things, right? So I am grateful for my natural talents and disposition. I am also extremely grateful for my husband, who is a true partner, who this would not be possible alone. And so I do not
He's
do it all.
very involved with his kids.
Super involved. We are true partners. So I'm here at AAJ for 4 days and I don't have to think twice. I don't have to give him instructions with the kids. I don't worry in the slightest because he is so involved.
He's got it under control.
He's so involved on a day-to-day basis that he doesn't need instructions. He's an involved dad. And so
Which is crazy that we need to tell dads instructions.
I have a lot of women colleagues who...
You're 50% responsible for these children.
100%. That's exactly right. We are co-parents. We are partners. And a lot of women struggle because they don't have a true partner. So I will say this is not entirely of my own making. What I will say that I do differently than I think women can try is what we talked about earlier with the thought work. And I think you have to cut ruthlessly out of your life what does not align with your core values.
So you talk a lot about this.
Yes. And so
can you give me an example?
Yes. So you got to trim the fat. I no longer drink alcohol.
For how long?
Consistently for like a year and a half. Well, no, then my last pregnancy. So consistently for about 2 years. I've probably in the last 2 years had like 3 drinks.
And was that something you noticed was like impacting you?
Yes. And so for me, I don't feel good during drinking alcohol and after. And I don't get good sleep. And sleep is a precious commodity for me that I already don't get a lot of. And the benefits did not outweigh the drawbacks. And so I am like an extreme extrovert. And so I love being out with people, and I don't give 2 shits if you're wasted or sober. I can have a great time.
You do. You're very
I'm
very fun.
Thank you. I can go and have fun with whomever, whenever. And so that also I think is part of the thought work where it's like I have no insecurity that I'm not drinking and that people try to pressure me. And
me and Maria were talking about that on the podcast we just shot, where she was saying a lot of people in the conference circuit, they have social anxiety. So they drink to kind of like.
Yeah. So going back to your question of an example of a core value, this all is interconnected. Get super clear on your core values, what matters to you most. Cut anything that is not in alignment with those core values, and really do this thought work on a regular basis. I had a life coach who one of my favorite lines of hers was, "Other people's opinions of you are none of your business." And so all of that social anxiety, all of that self-doubt, I personally think imposter syndrome is like a made-up concept that only hurts women. So that's a whole conversation for another day. But if you feel like you have imposter syndrome, this thought work and this core values work will help you get rid of that real quick.
And do you struggle with mom guilt?
Not at all.
I've told this story now. Now I used to.
Yes, same.
But it's something that I don't feel on a weekly, daily basis, really.
I think the last time I felt mom guilt was in 2020, 2021. And so it's been transformative in the last few years. Mom guilt is an optional thought we talked about earlier. Okay, let's talk about a thought that I used to have when I had mom guilt. I would go to AAJ for 4 or 5 days and worry about the time away, worry I was missing out on things I should be doing. First of all, stop shooting all over yourself. But that, all of the guilt of what I was missing and not doing.
Why can't they have a little quality time with their dad?
They have so much fun with their dad when I'm at these conferences. They love it.
They don't. It's actually a little narcissistic to think that you have to be there for every waking minute. Like, what about, like, my daughter right now while I'm at AAJ is with my parents in Tampa. And she's with my sister who's like in her 20s. And she's sending me pictures. Like, they're doing all these like fun things with her. And I'm like,
she's loving it.
It's good to have like other adults in your life as a kid that are significant than just your mom.
Yes, 100%. And so, the thoughts do creep in, right?
Maybe you have to
And
immediately
but
know.
it's that thought work I talked about earlier.
Control.
And you recognize it, you get curious, you're like, oh, those were those thoughts I used to have when I felt guilty about leaving for a conference or being in trial for 2 weeks. I was in trial.
But where did that come into our orbit that we should feel bad? Because that, I think, is not us.
So this is where I think it comes from. We, the women of the 70s worked very hard to start a movement to get women autonomy, opportunity, independence, and working outside the home, which
we're grateful for.
Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for.
The bra burners.
Yes. But what happened was the values of the time before that, let's just say the 50s, of the woman who cooks, who cleans, who dotes on her children,
caters,
who tracks their development and their medical appointments and makes sure they have the right clothes as they grow and all the things. What happened was our society propelled forward where women were doing amazing work outside the home, but still expected to do all of the things of a traditional male-female gender role.
We got double the work.
We got double the work.
And then we got burned out.
I routinely say I have 2 full-time jobs, right? Being a mom is a full-time job. Being a trial lawyer and law firm owner is a full-time job. I say that with joy, pride, and admiration but I don't do it all. There are things that I have missed preschool shows because I'm taking an expert deposition. I have missed my kids going to birthday parties of their good friends that I would love to be able to go that and support their little friend and the friend's parents. And I've missed it because I'm in trial or, I'm prepping over the weekend or traveling or whatever it is. And I can tell you the last time I had mom guilt, I missed my eldest son's Christmas performance in 2021 that was canceled because his class was quarantined for COVID. So they had it in January of 2022. And I was taking an expert depo. It's funny that example popped into my mind. And I was the only parent who was not there of anyone in his little class. And I was so upset. I was sad I missed it, but it was more than the sadness. It was the guilt of I'm the only mom that's not there.
You feel like an outsider.
I felt like an outsider. I felt shame. I felt sadness. I felt judgment. Because, let's face it, working moms, we encounter lots of judgment. And maybe those lawyer moms, because I have lots of friends who work in other professions who don't quite understand what we do. And we're trial lawyers. We're a unique breed, right? We're passionate and we get all consumed sometimes by our cases. But that was that there was some work I did with a life coach right around that time that was transformative. And what I realized was this mom guilt is an optional thought, and it is not a thought.
And it's not serving us.
It's not aligned with my core values. So it goes all the way back, right? And so number one,
it serves to keep women very small.
It keeps you small. It keeps you unhappy. It doesn't, and we talk a lot just personally about energy and the energy of the people you surround yourself with, how you keep your energy high when you have these high stakes, high level decisions to make and actions to take, and making sure that your partner and your colleagues really match your energy or embrace and uplift your energy. And so I think that mom guilt really keeps our energy low and keeps us small, as you were saying. And it is so insidious because I felt it before and I see my friends go through it now. It is so hard to shake it. And that cycle and that wallowing and the spiral downwards, it is so hard on women. And then it's your thoughts are like muscle memory in the same way like reps at the gym.
Repetitive.
Right. If you have a repetitive thought, without going into the neuroscience behind it, like we are wired for negative thoughts. And if you have a habit of thinking the same negative thought over and over, that becomes
dominant,
a deeply seated pattern that is really hard to change. I know it was hard to change in my life. And just as, bad habits are hard to change, like, the drinking to excess or eating junk food or whatever, it's hard to change bad habit, or it's hard to start a good habit, right? When you've fallen into a pattern of watching TV, it's hard to get up and exercise, right? the mom guilt thoughts or any negative thoughts, even men listening, right? Like the negative thoughts you have on loop, on repeat, are really hard to change. And it's really important that you do and work that muscle memory to start that new
That's a really
habit
good
loop.
perspective on mom guilt that I haven't heard someone really describe that way. But I think that is the thing. The more you feed it, the harder it is to break.
It is.
And
And it comes from a place, I think that women think it's the way they show love. Like, I do think that women, they're thinking it comes from a good place. Like, I love my children. I'm so devoted to my children that I feel so sad.
that I can't be at the performance.
So they stay small. They don't go to something that could serve them professionally because it would take away from home. I think that you can choose a different thought, right? So now if I have to miss a little class party or a show for my kids, or, I had to travel on one of my kids' birthdays. And so we celebrated before.
Yeah, I've done that before.
And so
the key is the celebration. It doesn't necessarily have to be that exact day. It could be a school day.
it could be anything you make it, right?
And okay, here's how my approach to mom guilt that has really helped me. I remember thinking about, now, regardless of your political leaning, like, let's just say we just pick different women. Let's say Beyonce. Let's say Hillary Clinton. Let's just say people that are pretty high profile women. I started thinking to myself, like, probably 10 years ago when I first had kids, the kids of these women cannot be living like a normal life.
No, certainly not.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're Beyonce's daughter,
You probably have private tutors and a private chef and going on private jets, but they actually get to see their mom in this amazing, powerful role.
yeah, but like, I don't think Beyonce's going to every soccer game.
No.
Like, she might, but like, I'm just imagining with her when she's on tour, like, there's no way, right?
Yeah.
Maybe her daughter isn't in soccer, but let's just say this, like,
There were normal
mom
kids.
guilt comes from this idea that there's a correct way to live, and it's like this very in a box, like Pollyanna kind of life. I gave myself permission to be like, I am a very unique person, and I think if we all thought about ourselves that way, it's true. We're all unique. We're not all the same.
Yes.
And in my unique life, like, I own a law firm and I'm a lawyer, and like, I have a very different background than many of the kids who go to school with my kids. And my kids chose me to be their parent on a spiritual, energetic level. And so, like, me being my unique self is like serving at the highest level because I want them to grow up to want to be themselves. And like, you were born the child of Beyonce. You were born the child of Megan Whiteside. You were born the child of Jenn Gore. You're not going to have like the exact same experience maybe as every other kid.
Yes. And I see, and I have observed with my children that they are so adaptable.
Oh, the kids are very adaptable.
And they are little animals that feed off of your energy.
So if you have guilt, you make them feel bad.
They will think that there is something wrong with you not being at the performance or the show or the party or the birthday or whatever it is.
Like, okay, let's just walk through that. The party happens. You know you're not going to be able to go. It's on Saturday. Are they going and you're not going?
Yeah, so my husband has taken
Dad's gonna
my
take
kids to birthday parties, a lot of birthday parties that I haven't been to.
Okay, but what is the negative about that?
I think it's great.
If you say to your child, Mom can't go to the birthday party. I have to go do trial prep this weekend. I'm really upset about it.
Then they're going to get upset about it. They are little animals. They feed off of your energy.
Or you could say, what, Megan?
Dada gets to take you to so-and-so's birthday party. You're going to go to do laser tag. You're going to, whatever you're going to get to go to, you're going to have pizza, you're going to have cake, and this and that. And then I'm going to get to see you for dinner. I can't wait to hear about it.
That is the reframe. It's how you describe your life and the set of circumstances to your kids. That is how they absorb it. Now, I still get every so often, because they kind of compare. Well, why weren't you, you're like, my daughter said to me the other day, she's like, Mom, you're not really a minivan mom. And I'm like, and no, I'm not.
Yeah, me neither.
And on purpose,
That's
and
right.
like, it's just not who I am. Like, I am not going to not be myself to be your parent.
Yeah. I love conversations like this. And so my eldest is 8, so I'm a couple years behind where you are with Julia. And I love the questions that come from my 8-year-old. And I see every question as an opportunity. And so what I think that the thought work has helped me with is that questions maybe in a past version of Megan would have brought upon feelings of shame and guilt because I was unconsciously adopting those negative thoughts. Now a question will come, and sometimes they still cut. Kids ask you things, and they're like, "Ooh, that one cut." But I can pause and say, I'm having a thought about this. It's leading me to that feeling of like, it feels like a jab. Why is that?" And it takes like a half a second, right? And like, I pause, and sometimes if I need a little bit more time for myself for the reframe, I'll answer their question with a question and then
Yes, I
give
love that.
myself a
What do
moment.
you think?
Yeah. Oh, what do you think about that? Or, oh, where's that question coming from? Or what do
But also, Megan, like, I had another like thought that just came to me. I am not a perfect person.
no.
And I don't want my kids to think I'm a perfect person. And like, I'm flawed, you're flawed,
Mm-hmm.
we're imperfect human beings. And like, this mom guilt is this standard of like, you're a perfect person. And like, it's an unreasonable standard.
Perfection is unreasonable. And what you just said brings me back to one of the lessons that sort of broke this all open for me that led to this massive change in and adopting thought work. And so I grew up in a household where I experienced a lot of criticism, which led to a lot of feelings of shame. So shame was a major part of my childhood. And that carried into young adulthood, and I had to work through a lot of stuff. And I joke, it's like the priest that married my husband and I turned to him for some questions and advice at that phase of life. And I had a therapist, and I joke that my priest and my therapist identified what the problems and the sources of those sources of shame were, but I wasn't able to work through it. It wasn't until I got a life coach who actually gave me some strategies to work through it. And then I thought about, I never want any of my children to experience the shame that I did. Never. And I had this sort of revelation when after my second child, and he had just turned 1. And I was really in a dark place. And I thought, I never want my children to hustle for their worth. I never want them to feel the level of shame that I did. How can I teach what I don't know?
If you don't have your own self-worth,
If I don't have my own self-worth, if I don't have strategies to work through this shit,
you can't
how am I going to teach them? I am going to pass down habits and thoughts, now that I can see in with hindsight, habits and thoughts that really held me back and didn't serve me. And oh my gosh, it finally cracked me wide open, and I reached this sort of rock bottom emotionally where I'm like, okay, I've got to do some work because I want to raise powerful, confident, happy children who will launch their lives and do amazing things in this world without being encumbered and having to go to therapy. And maybe they'll have to go to therapy because we're all imperfect, right? But like, not therapy for the same things that I did, and not have to do this deep work with life coaches. And so, and what's crazy about my childhood is I didn't have like a traditionally what you would think of as a traumatic childhood. And I had parents who I really believe were trying their best. But
literally, we had the same childhood.
yeah.
But I'm also to a place, I don't know if you're there, where it's like, this was the childhood I had to have to become the person that I am.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for all of the struggle and all the adversity, because like, diamonds are created with pressure. So I'm also like in a conflict of like, I don't want to take away all my kids' potential like life struggles, because I do think that's what's character building.
They're going to have struggles.
Everybody's going to face struggles. It's part of the process. And it's like, I would like to limit them from catastrophic, things. But I also want to humanize the experience of going through life and being a human. And we all have struggles, and that's okay and natural.
Well, and it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of this, right? Life is 50-50. And no matter what you do, you're never going to shield your children from difficult experiences in life.
Yes.
What
But
I
you want to be
can
the
shield them,
lighthouse.
yes, what I
for
can shield
safety.
them from is feelings of inadequacy and shame at my doing.
Yes. And that's what we're really talking
And
about.
that's what we're talking about. And so I can model certain things for them. I can treat them with the care and respect
And support.
I can teach them these strategies.
Like
Sometimes,
a foundation.
yes. And my eldest sometimes laughs at me because he's like, you're saying words I don't understand. That's a big word. What do you mean? Because I'm trying to teach them these concepts of thought work, and
I'm the same. I read mindset books to my kids.
yes. And my second child, every child is different in their disposition, their personality, and how they learn things. And my second child gets incredibly self-critical in a way that my first doesn't. And my babies, my little two, are too soon to tell. But I can see it already that my second is so self-critical. And I know what that's like because I am exactly the same way. And so trying to teach him strategies at age 6 that I had to learn in my 30s.
It's so
right?
good.
And so I know that they will face struggle, but maybe I can arm them with some strategies.
The
and
tools.
Yes.
This is what it's about. It's not about avoiding struggle. It's the tools.
And the modeling, right? Because more is caught than taught.
Yes.
And so what I do and how I operate and
How you show up in the world sets a precedent.
And my husband and I fight like all married couples fight, but we are very intentional about not only if we fight in front of the children, we do the resolution and the apologies in front of the children as well, so that they see, like, you can have disagreements and arguments, and then you can come back together and resolve it in a way so that they can see, like, okay, you're fighting each other, but you're fighting with respect, and you come back into a resolution of mutual respect. Even if one person thinks they're right, and maybe one person was right, you can come back with like mutual respect and admiration. And so, how I show up at work and not approaching things with guilt and unapologetically, just I love my work. I'm very clear that if I had to choose between work and family, my family would come first and I would give up this whole career. But luckily, I don't have to make that choice, right? And so my family can see that I prioritize them. And when I'm with them and having quality time, I'm all in. And then there are times I'm away and I'm here and I'm all in for work, or especially for trial, right? Like I had a 2-week trial when my daughter was 4 months old. And the only times I saw her was when she woke in the night. Like, it was close enough to home. I was staying at home and not a hotel. I left before she woke up, and I was home after she went to bed because the baby went to bed early. Sometimes I would catch the older two. And I could have had so much guilt about that. 2 weeks away from my baby daughter, not seeing her unless she woke in the night, which she did because she was going through the 4-month sleep regression, but that's a whole other story. It was like she wanted to see me. But I did not feel guilty in the slightest because I had a mission to do. I knew I had righteous work to do and a trial that needed my full attention. And then it was 2 weeks.
And it's over.
It's a blip on the screen. And she doesn't remember it. She was 4 months old, right? And she's a happy, thriving, nearly 3-year-old girl who is none the wiser. It only would have served to hurt me and keep me small. And perhaps for my older two, boys would have seen a version of me that I wouldn't have been proud of, right? And so it's all that thought work. And if you identify what matters, like, my core values are joy, family, and service. So when I am with my children, I find so much joy in the mundane, like sitting together for family dinner. And I've got boys, so that's like 15, 20 minutes max, right? But we're all together. And it's just wherever the conversation leads or whatever we're doing, I enjoy it. It is a joyful experience. And the family, obviously, right? We talked about that. Family comes first. But service, part of what I'm doing as a trial lawyer really feeds that core value. And so I have ruthlessly cut a lot of stuff out of my life in this season with small children. I don't socialize that much.
Yeah, you told me that.
Yeah. And my husband and I don't go out on date nights very much in this season of life. And we're both very
You're just keeping it
crystal clear.
Minimal things.
Yeah. And so I think men and women alike, we get consumed with the shoulds. A parent should be doing these things. A trial lawyer should be doing these things. Oh, I should be going to this social event. I should be supporting. I've had to say no to some things to some people I love deeply, really close friends. No, I'm not able to go on that trip, or I'm not able to make it to your celebration for your 40th birthday.
And I think that's just realistically, you're knowing your limit.
Yeah, because time is the only finite resource.
Yeah.
And so you have so much. And if I'm got to choose between an amazing girls' trip in a tropical location, which I probably would love to go and relax, or something that was critically important to my children that I had the opportunity to be at, but for that trip, I'm choosing my kids all day, every day. And, sometimes you don't have to make those difficult choices and you can do both. And there will come a season in my life where I will get to travel more internationally like I did in my 20s. Like my husband and I traveled a ton before we had kids, and it just was an amazing season of life.
Yes.
We're not in that season right now.
But it's just seasons, right?
It's seasons.
Meg, you have shared so many valuable insights. I think that this is an amazing discussion that so many younger women need to hear. I think that you have not only a great perspective, but you live what you say. And I just want to continue seeing you spread the good message. And I'm really excited for people to hear, all the work you're doing. Can you share how people can get a hold of you?
Yes. So if you need help on a nursing home abuse and neglect case, you can check out my website, whitesidelegal.com. Social media is the same. LinkedIn. You find me, Megan Whiteside or Whiteside Legal. I also have an Instagram, Mom, Life, and Law, which I have had a podcast in the past. I keep getting so close to bringing it back, but as we talked about, time is a finite resource, but that will be coming back. So Mom, Life, and Law, it's a podcast where we have discussions like this, and I interview guests who are lawyers and moms and are, every one of us can learn something valuable from each other. And so, Whiteside Legal, all of the things, Mom, Life, and Law. It's actually me handling all of my social media. And so if you send me a message,
you'll get it.
I'll get it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the Tip the Scales podcast. I'm really excited to watch your story unfold this year.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you so much for listening in to Tip the Scales podcast today. If you liked what you heard, like, subscribe, click, comment, do all the things, and we'll see you on the next one.